Welcome to the Polestar 4. It's another all-electric SUV from the premium arm of Volvo, and it'll probably sell very, very well. But let's cut to the chase, because this is a practical family car that doesn't have a rear window. No, really, it doesn't. You literally cannot see through the back. And that's because Polestar reckons you simply don't need one. It's obsolete on this car.
We're definitely going to go into more detail on that in a bit, but first I want to talk to you about Polestar's naming strategy, because it's a little bit different to other manufacturers. You see, usually when you have a model range which is named after numbers, you'd naturally expect the smallest and the cheapest cars to be named after the lowest number, and the most expensive and the largest cars to be named after the highest number. But at Polestar, doesn't quite work like that. So you had the Polestar 1, which was a luxury plug-in hybrid coupe. The Polestar 2 is a sort of hatchback SUV, and it's the smallest and the cheapest car that Polestar currently makes. The Polestar 3 is an SUV, and then the Polestar 4, fits in between the 2 and the 3 for size and probably for price as well. You've also got the Polestar 5, which is coming up, and that's going to be a luxury saloon, and the Polestar 6, which is going to be a roadster. Make sense?
Anyway, back to the Polestar 4, and we'll start with what's underneath, because unlike the Polestar 3 that used the SPA2 platform, the 4 actually uses an SEA platform from parent company Geely. Should you care? Well, probably not, but it does show that the difference between the 3 and the 4 is more than just the body shell. Speaking of which, the 4 is instantly recognisable at the front end thanks to its low, sloping nose and dual blade front lights. You'd also spot a reduction in the black trim inserts over the 3, plus there's neat design touches such as retractable door handles and frameless windows.
Now, as for scale, the 4 actually isn't that much smaller than the 3. I mean, yes, it's lower, but it's actually a little bit wider, and it's only 6 centimeters shorter. But the biggest design point doesn't come until you walk around the rear of the car and you see no rear window. There really isn't one at all. And in fact, Polestar says it's not so much for an aesthetic look at me thing, it's actually more about the aerodynamics and how much space you get from a practicality point of view without having that rear window. And I've got to say, I think it looks better in the flesh than it does in pictures, because if you get it at the wrong angle in the picture, I think it can look a little bit awkward. But here, it looks really standout, and I actually quite like it. And I can't think of any other car like this that isn't a supercar that doesn't have a rear window. So let us know what you think of it in the comments.
So, no rear window equals better aerodynamics and more rear seat passenger space. And on the first note, we're going to have to take Polestar's word for it, but we can find out today if the latter is true. And guess what? It is.
Now, given how sleek this car's roofline is, the amount of space in here is honestly extraordinary. You've got tons of knee room and headroom, and it just feels nice and spacious. And there's no issues with light getting in either, because although there's no rear screen, there is a ginormous full-length panoramic roof. And admittedly, we're in a studio, so you don't quite get to see the benefit of it, but it will let a lot of light in, and it allows you to see all that's going on in front of you and above. So that's really nice. There's also a really good amount of quality here. It feels super well put together. Everything's nice to the touch, and we've actually got these folding backrests that can go forwards or back and give you that little bit of extra space. And if you look back, there's a weird thing where there's, again, no rear window, but we can see the ambient lighting makes it not feel as dark as it perhaps could in that area. We've also got, obviously, no central tunnel, so that's great for if you've got someone in the middle seat, and we can fold that up. But there's also a little touchscreen down here where you can control media and climate control. And overall, if you're sitting in the back, it doesn't feel like you're missing out.
There's also a really good amount of boot space, 500 litres versus 484 on the larger Polestar 3, with only the smaller frunk bringing the overall numbers down. And if you're wondering how you're supposed to see out of the back, Polestar has replaced the rear view mirror with a screen that's linked to a camera positioned on the roof. It's not original, but it should be effective.
Now that's no great surprise given that many cars with a rear window still have the display and a camera in addition to the regular mirror. But what does strike me about sitting in this Polestar 4 cabin is just how crisp and calm and premium it feels. I mean, you'd expect nothing less from the stylish Swedes, but even by their standards, this is properly exceptional. It feels really special in here. And also, this is a pre-production model, so it's not entirely finished. And it does bode really well for the final cars because I can't really find anything wrong with it. Usually when we do these kind of previews, you can spot some rough edges, but there's nothing like that at all in here. The stitching's great, the materials feel great. It's a really nice place to be. And also, it's sustainable too. Polestar's very into their sustainability, and they can back it up because there's plenty of sustainable and recycled materials used throughout the 4. An example of which is this tailored knit textile, which you can see on the seats, and it's made from entirely recycled polyethylene terephthalate, or better known as PET polyester. And it's also used on the inlay around the floor, and the actual floor carpets are made partly using recycled fishing nets, which is very clever. But back to this material, the polyethylene terephthalate. It's not the perfect solution for sustainability. There are some concerns about the process when you recycle it, but even so, it's been used extensively throughout this car, and it's definitely a step in the right direction, and it's a lot more sustainable than materials that you'll see on rival cars, for example.
As for what's under the skin, the Polestar will be sold in single motor and dual motor form. The former starts from just under £60,000 and the latter from just under £67,000. And regardless of which one you pick, the standard equipment levels are very high. Fully electric heated front seats, an adjustable tailgate, a suite of safety systems and 360-degree surround view are included, as is in the UK the Plus pack, this coming with the 14.7-inch head-up display, Harman Kardon audio system, heated steering wheel, electric heated rear seats and much more. Optional equipment meanwhile includes the Pilot pack semi-autonomous driving tech, the Napa pack for a more luxurious cabin, the Pro pack with 21-inch alloy wheels and the Performance pack with even bigger wheels, sportier suspension settings, better brakes and tyres.
Back to the standard equipment though, and one thing that you'll notice as soon as you get in the 4 is that the 15.4-inch central infotainment screen, which is very prominent, is landscape rather than portrait like it is in other Polestar models. Now, there's a number of reasons behind this, but the main one I think is that it's a different platform to other Polestars. And that means that you've basically got an entirely different way of using the screen, because instead of having lists like you would on a portrait screen, it's more to do with icons. Now, this system is using an Android operating system. You get that in the UK and Europe and other locations, whereas in China, you get the Polestar operating system, which differs to this. But anyway, we've got the European one, and I've got to say, it's very, very good indeed. I think it's really getting up to the point where it's almost at Tesla levels, because it's really nice, it's really intuitive, it's got very, very crisp and clean graphics. You can see what you're doing just by glancing at it because of the way that they highlight certain icons in orange so that you can see when they're off and they're on, and it's just super easy and crisp to use, much like the rest of the cabin. My only real concern with it is that the fog lights, they don't have their own physical switch. There is a lack of physical switches in here, which goes with the design, but when it's something like a safety function and you've got to put it in the shortcuts menu or you've got to go into the lighting menu, that's not really ideal. So it's a shame to see that, but otherwise it's a super slick infotainment system, and I think this is going to go down very well indeed.
Unsurprisingly, Polestar's strong link to Volvo means that safety is a very big deal with the 4. A total of 12 cameras, 1 radar and 12 ultrasonic sensors are fitted as standard, as well as up to 9 airbags. The cameras feature driver monitoring capability to keep an eye on whether the driver is actively engaged, and also contribute to the aforementioned optional Pilot pack that includes brake, acceleration and steering support at speeds of up to 93 miles an hour.
There should, however, be plenty of occasions when you'll want to drive the Polestar 4 all by yourself, because like other Polestars, it should be good fun to drive. Now, it doesn't matter whether you get the all-wheel drive or the rear-wheel drive single motor version, you still get the same 94 kilowatt-hour usable battery. Where things change is in the range and the performance. So with the single motor rear-wheel drive car, you get 268 brake horsepower, 253 pounds-foot of torque, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 7.1 seconds, and a range of 379 miles. With the dual motor all-wheel drive, however, you're getting 536 brake horsepower, 506 pounds-foot of torque, 0 to 62 miles an hour in 3.8 seconds, and a range which is only a little bit lower at 360 miles. You also get the semi-active dampers as standard with the dual motor all-wheel drive version, and they should be very good at keeping this car's 2.2, 2.3 ton curb weight in check.
Both versions get a 50-50 weight distribution, a 2-ton towing capacity, and a 400-volt architecture with 200 kilowatt DC charging capability, thus meaning a 10 to 80% refill from said chargers should take about 30 minutes. Meanwhile, 22 kilowatt AC charging means a 0 to 100% refill in around 5.5 hours. Overall then, the Polestar 4 appears very promising. It fits in nicely with rivals such as the Tesla Model Y and Porsche Macan EV, and it does things its own way. The lack of a rear window might put some people off, but it's hard to argue with the space and aerodynamic benefits, plus it's definitely a talking point. As is the cabin for that matter. It's truly a lovely place to sit. All that remains is how it drives, something which we'll find out in the middle of 2024 when the launch takes place. And if you don't want to miss that or any other videos on the Car Magazine YouTube channel, then make sure you subscribe and turn your notifications on.